Welcome everyone to Fed Talk number 5. Tonight we have Todd Rapp and Tasha Newman here to talk to you about listening to one another on a very controversial topic, which is politics. So we're here to look and see how one conversation can be a model for civil and productive conversations as a church. So without further ado, here's Todd and Tasha.
So my name is Tasha Newman, and I'm just going to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about my background and why I wanted to participate in this talk. So I am a mom of 3. I attend Arbor House here. I am a school psychologist. I work in a high school for students with emotional and behavioral needs. And I've been pretty much a lifelong Democrat. I have many conservative friends, and I had this idea of talking with Todd one day when I noticed on his Facebook he put a picture of just a very violent protest, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Why are people getting hurt over political differences? And I said, hey, Todd, we should make a video about just how we can love each other and how we can really care about each other's interests and ideas and still disagree respectfully. So that was my idea, and then Fed Talks came along and it turned into more of this kind of format.
I'm Todd Rapp. I spent many years working in emergency medical services. I currently work for the Salvation Army here in Batavia. I attend here at Arbor House. I work in the social services office of the Salvation Army, as well as oversee emergency disaster services there. I'm here for much the same reason as Tasha. I posted that picture of the things that were going on, and it was kind of heartbreaking that people would become so violent over simple differences in opinion and treat each other so vilely. And this has been something that's been on my heart for a long time, is how do we overcome the violent aspect of differences of opinions. And when Tasha approached me, I thought it was a great idea. Didn't know it was going to blossom into this, but here we are, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So
the first thing that Todd and I kind of wanted to talk about is that we need to understand that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, there are assumptions that are made about you. And there are stereotypes. And whenever you come into these kind of conversations, you need to realize that the person that might have the opposite view or opinions of you has likely been hurt or at least offended because they have been labeled or stereotyped by the media, by other people who disagree with them. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the stereotypes that I have faced, and then Todd was going to talk about some of the stereotypes that conservatives have faced. So I registered to vote when I was 18. Didn't know exactly where I was politically, but I was told, make sure you pick a party because you want to be able to vote in the primaries, and that's really important. You want a candidate who's going to best represent you. So I kind of did some research and thought mostly I line up with the Democratic Party, so that's how I registered. And my first presidential election that I voted in was for Gore. So that was my first big one. And I when I tell people that I am a Democrat, and I wore my Bernie Sanders shirt tonight to represent that, these are some things that people assume about me. That I'm pro-abortion. I am not. I am pro-life. I do not believe that the government should make that decision. I am pro-life. That I'm communist. Nope, I'm not communist. I do believe strongly in democracy. I'm very grateful to live in a country that is built on democracy. That I'm unpatriotic because, Democrats, liberals, they believe the whole world should come together and other countries are the same as ours. And yeah, but I love my country and I'm a proud American and I love the history of my country. It's not perfect, but no country is. And I think it's beautiful how diverse we are. So I'm very patriotic. That I'm anti-military. I actually have family, an extensive family history in the military, in the Navy and the Army. And I fully support veterans and giving to veterans and supporting veterans and welcoming veterans back home. That's important to me. People might assume that I'm anti-gun ownership. That's not true. I actually was raised in a house with guns. My dad's an avid hunter. I learned how to shoot a gun at a young age for protection and for hunting. And I don't believe there's anything wrong with owning a rifle or a handgun. But I do have issues with the amount of violence that has happened in America and some of the semi-automatic weapons that are out there. And the last one, and the one that probably hurts the most, is that I'm not a real Christian. And I've faced that a lot in the church. That if you're a Christian, then you vote Republican because you have to, because if you're pro-life, it's the only way to go to vote Republican. And that my core of who I am is a follower of Christ. So to be told that because of my political leanings, I'm not a real Christian, that's really hurtful.
So as a conservative Republican, some of the issues that confront me, that people assume about me when they find that out, I hate gay people, that I believe they shouldn't have any rights at all. That's not true. That I hate immigrants. The fact is, I work pretty hard to support some immigrant families in this community. That I don't believe in helping low-income people, which I think is absolutely hysterical because I work in social services at the Salvation Army, especially this time of year. My life is consumed with providing for the needs of people who are less fortunate than myself. People assume that I am pro-war, which is ludicrous. Nobody, I don't think anybody ever is pro-war, if you understand what war is. It's sometimes necessary, but I don't think I would be considered pro-war. People also assume that because I'm a conservative Republican male, that I am sexist, that I think women should be subjugated and men should be superior. Also not true. And the last one that hurts a great deal is that people assume I'm racist, that and all that entails. And again, that is simply not true. And those are some of the stereotypes that people put on, particularly an older middle-aged white male. So, we all come at this from different angles and with different assumptions. And I think that's one of the things that causes some of the friction.
And I think when I enter into a discussion with somebody who I know is conservative, I have to recognize those things. I have to recognize that they have been labeled in those ways, and I have to be sensitive to that. And if they come off a little bit defensive, that maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe somebody who, like Todd, or my father, for example, is a very, very conservative man, have been labeled as a racist when there's not a racist bone in their bodies. And so I need to come into that conversation knowing that and recognizing that.
Yeah, and the same from our side. When you want to talk to somebody who considers themselves a liberal, we make those same assumptions. And we have to enter these conversations knowing that there are strong emotions on both sides, and be sensitive to that.
So what do people really want? I think that this is universal. It's not just limited to politics, but people want to be heard, and people want to be respected. You don't have to agree with me, but just listen, because maybe I have something that you will agree with or that you will learn about that you didn't know before, and vice versa. So I think that's primarily what, now some people come into a political discussion because they want to fight, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then I think that there's a lot of people that are afraid to because they're afraid of those defenses, or because they're afraid it will turn into an argument, but just really, really knowing people want to be heard and they want to be respected.
Respect, I think, is huge. We live in a great country, and we all believe in the God-given rights that are laid out in the Constitution, and those rights apply to all of us, to liberals and conservatives, and we have that right to express our views, express our concerns, express our opinions, to be heard, maybe not agreed with, but we do have that right to be able to express where we come from and what we believe.
So I wanted to share a little bit about my background and kind of how my political beliefs were formed. And then I wanted to hear from Todd about how his beliefs were formed. So I was a kid who grew up in poverty. Did not have much at all. I lived in either trailers or apartments or motels throughout most of my life until I was in high school. And so that really kind of formed this deep desire of wanting to help low-income families. And I felt like the government didn't do enough for my family. It was a time when there was not health care available to families like mine. So, when I had two parents who were working minimum wage jobs, but they were working full time, so they didn't qualify for, say, Medicaid at the time. And so there were times when somebody was really sick, and in fact, I had a sister who was often sick with ear infections, bronchitis, pneumonia. She was just a very sick baby, very sick kid, and it was a huge stressor on our family to go to the doctor, to find money, to go to the doctor, to pay for medication. And I remember one night we were sitting in the car, and I remember this very vividly, that the medicine that she needed was $80, and my parents were they were crying. They didn't know how they were going to find $80 to pay for her medication. And so one of my core political beliefs is universal health care, and that's where that comes from that experience. Another one is caring for the environment. I do believe that we are stewards of this planet, of God's creation, and we need to take care of it. And so I do believe that we should be putting monies and energies into cleaner energy and a future that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. Like I said, with the poverty thing, also working with a lot of students who live in poverty, although government assistance is sometimes abused, I also believe that it's necessary. We live in the wealthiest country in the world, and we shouldn't have people starving or not knowing how to pay for their rent. We should be able to take care of our poor. And then just diplomacy, really believing that things like the United Nations can be used effectively, and there's a reason why they were instilled, and we can come together. So that's kind of why I lean left.
Well, that's interesting because, well, I hear you saying that you as a child felt probably not safe, not secure, and a big part of that was inaccessibility to services due to finances, and that there was no support through government sources. I hear you saying that the environment is a huge issue and that we have to be good stewards of that. And I hear you saying that diplomacy is very important. And I'm smiling because I'm a conservative and I agree 100% with what she said. In fact, I grew up much the same way that you did, a very poor family. It was not uncommon for me to come home from school and find that the electricity was off. It was not uncommon to open my lunch at school and have bread and butter for lunch. And so we have a lot of the same experiences and a lot of the same hurts. So it's interesting that we end up on different ends of the political spectrum having those same experiences. So that being said, I'm not really sure then how I fall on the conservative side on those particular issues. So maybe I'm more on the liberal side of those issues. So that's that's a little eye-opening, and those are the things that we discover when we can have open, kind conversations with each other. But I do lean on the conservative side. I think that particularly government spending, I think we have got to control spending money we don't have. I agree that universal health care would be a great thing, but we can't spend money we don't have. So we have to find the money somewhere else. Other things have to be cut. We have to make hard choices sometimes. So financially, I am very conservative with what I think the government should do with the money. Environmentally, I agree wholeheartedly. We've got to take care of the planet. And I think where conservatives and liberals stray from each other on the issue of environment is the causes of the environmental issues and how they should be dealt with. And that's something that people way above my pay grade can figure out, because I don't have those answers. And it would not be kind of me to insist that I do and that your views should change. So that's just a little bit about where I am with some of my political beliefs. Socially, I would probably say I might lean a little more liberal than the hard conservative line. I believe that people in society should be free to make the choices they want to make. I, as a born-again Christian, have certain beliefs that are my spiritual beliefs, and I don't believe that I have the right to impose those on anybody else. And if a gay couple want to express their love for each other, and they're not of the same religious faith as I am, who am I to tell them they can't do that? I can certainly show them in Scripture what God's plan would be should they decide to follow him. But I can't insist that they live like a Christian if they're not a Christian. And it's not fair of me to even surmise that I should do that. So it's just very, very fractured sometimes. And I think if we can acknowledge that with where we stand on most issues, I think we can come a lot closer together.
So, Todd, I heard you say that socially you're actually maybe a little more liberal than most conservatives. A lot of your conservative beliefs come from they're rooted in your religious beliefs. However, you don't believe that just because you have a particular religious belief that means it should be applied to everybody who isn't a Christian. I appreciate that. Todd, I really appreciate what a generous person you are. You're generous with your time and your talents, and your finances and your gifts, and you are probably one of the most generous people I've ever known, to be honest. Well, you and Kathy both. And I feel blessed to know people who are like you, who are also conservative, because then I know that when I see things through media, through social media, or I hear things about conservatives, that I can stand up for my conservative friends, and I can recognize that you're not a stereotype, and you're not anti everybody who doesn't believe what you do.
Thank you for that. And I would say, Tasha, you are probably one of the most nurturing people I've ever met. And I watch you with your kids, and I watch you with the kids here at church, and I see a boundless love, and just the love of Christ as you minister to the kids and minister to your own kids, and I think that is phenomenal. It is a joy to know you, and to know your husband and your kids, and I'm really excited that we were able to be here tonight. The last couple of things that I wanted to share, and I'm going to try to do this without getting emotional, but I probably will, because that's who I am. There are a couple of really important things that we need to remember when we want to talk politics, or when we find ourselves talking politics, even when we don't want to talk politics. I think the first thing that we have to make a decision about, we have to overcome the desire to win an argument. I'm not going to change anything that Tasha believes by talking over her, by telling her she's wrong, by just overpowering her. I'm not going to change what she believes. I'm not going to change what somebody believes by what I'm posting on Facebook. I can share things that I think are funny because I know I have friends that'll think they're funny, but I can't go into that thinking I'm going to win an argument, I'm going to change somebody's mind. That just doesn't work. We also have to be willing to listen. Not just listen, but to hear. Even in our discussion here tonight, we've heard each other say things that we definitely agree on, and that goes a long way towards civility. We have to be willing to accept that we might just simply disagree on something. There's the old adage of the two blind men describing an elephant. One is standing in front and one is standing behind. They're both describing the same thing, but it's a very different experience depending on which end you're on. And I think above all else, we have to absolutely love the person that we're talking to the way that Jesus Christ loves us. I remember sitting out here a couple of weeks ago as Pastor Marcia was speaking, and she was talking about Jesus Christ standing before Pontius Pilate as he was about to pronounce sentence on him. And she told us that Jesus did not look at Pontius Pilate as someone to be scorned, hated, or despised, but that Jesus looked at him through eyes of love, compassion, and concern. And that when Pilate questioned him, Jesus reflected back the questions to Pilate, giving Pilate the opportunity to process who this was that was standing before him. And I think if we can look at each other that same way, if we can understand that God's grace is sufficient for each one of us, not just me because I'm a conservative Republican Christian, but even to the Buddhist, the Hindu, the whoever, God's grace is sufficient for them, and God's love is as consuming for them as it is for me. And I think if we can get there, or even close, we're not going to see people hitting each other over the head with chairs because we agree on who should pay for the abortion pill, or who should have voter ID, and who should get citizenship and all of that. Those are all issues that, yeah, we need to figure out, but we've got to listen to each other, and we have to be compassionate to each other. And I think that's what makes America great.
Absolutely. Nothing to add to that.
Any questions, any comments?
Don't be afraid just because it's about politics.
Would you say that your common faith makes these kinds of dialogues easier or harder because you've got this common core, but you find yourself in different places?
So I'm going to repeat the question because people on Facebook have been asking that. Would you say that your common faith makes these conversations easier or more difficult? Anything else? Was that pretty much the sum?
Both. It depends on the individual topic, I think. You make assumptions as believers in Christ that you agree on everything, and that's not true. We all look at different topics and interpret Scripture in different ways. I mean, there's the essentials that we agree on, but a lot of those issues we can disagree on, and that can make it more difficult to talk about those things.
I think for me, it is more difficult just because maybe I just feel so outnumbered. I just feel like as the minority, and I think anytime you're the minority in a group, it's a little bit harder to speak up and to share your point of view. But I think as the last few years especially, I'm finding more and more other Christians who are listening to me and who are saying, I might have voted for so-and-so because I believe this, but I don't disagree with you on this, this, and this. So it's been getting easier, I think, the last few years. But overall, it's been tough.
Anybody else? I do have a confession to make.
Yes, sir.
My first political experience was working on the presidential campaign of Jimmy Carter. That dates me, right?
Yeah, I'm young.
Question in the back? Was Jimmy a Democrat? He absolutely was. That's why it was a confession.
Oh, I thought you were confessing your age.
No, I was confessing that I worked for a Democrat.
Yeah. See, I wasn't born yet, so I didn't know that.
Nice. Yes. Oh, okay. Anybody else?
There's a theologian named Miroslav Volf who writes a lot about otherness and how often when we pick a side, we view the people on the other side as being other, and we don't recognize, I guess, the image of God
Yeah.
in them. And so it makes it easier for us to not like them, and it makes it easier for us to say nasty things about them and to caricature them. And I think that's a big problem within the political discourse, and that we don't recognize the image of God in the person sitting across from us.
Yeah, that's important to recognize the image of God in everyone. I remember many, many years ago going on a mission trip to Haiti, and all of a sudden realizing I'm not supposed to be here. and being in this boat and pulling into this little cove and seeing all of these dark faces and not pleasant smells and thinking, why am I here? And in that moment, I prayed a very dangerous prayer. I said, God, help me see these people the way you see them, and help me feel for these people what you feel for them. And in that moment, he broke my heart for the Haitian people. And I couldn't get off the boat fast enough to start working with those people. So recognizing the image of God in others, and particularly in people that we might have conflict with, is vital. Yeah.
I think for me, it's been helpful it's been helpful preventing me from seeing Republicans as other, just growing up in a very politically conservative home, and having family that is conservative, and knowing, these are good people with good hearts who want to do good in the world, and being in church with people on the other side of the aisle, that helps me to not say other. So I think, of course, the more time you spend with people that you think are different than you, the more your eyes are going to be opened.
And the more you become like them, and they like you. So, yeah. Anybody else? Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining us on Facebook.
Bye.